I gave my whole life to one family. My time. My strength. My silence. And one night, sitting at a dinner table I paid for, in a house that existed because of me, I realized something that shattered me completely. I wasn't family. I was furniture. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, this story is for you. I still remember the sound of plates touching the table. Soft. Careful. Perfect. The house was warm, every light turned on just right. The curtains were freshly pressed. The floors were spotless. They always were. Because I made sure of it. The smell of food filled the air, slow-cooked, seasoned early that morning, checked twice before I left the kitchen. I had planned the meal even though I wasn't supposed to be there. I had already spent the entire day running errands so everything would look presentable. I wasn't invited to dinner. I was required to be useful. My daughter-in-law had forgotten to tell me her parents were coming again. She said it like it was nothing. Oh, I didn't think it mattered, she shrugged earlier that day. But the house needs to look good. So I stayed. I told myself it was easier that way. I set the table, straightened the chairs, wiped fingerprints from the wall near the hallway. I moved quietly, the way you do when you don't want to be noticed. They arrived just before sunset. Her parents walked in like they owned the place. Confident, loud, comfortable. They didn't look around in admiration. They looked around in judgment. Her mother's eyes landed on me as I stood near the counter. She tilted her head. "And you are?" she asked. The question wasn't curious. It was dismissive. Before I could answer, my daughter-in-law laughed. Not nervously. Not awkwardly. Comfortably. "Oh," she said, waving her hand. "That's Linda. She keeps everything running around here." She smiled. Everyone laughed. My son laughed too. I felt something drop inside my chest. Not like pain. More like something heavy being removed. I stood there holding a serving dish, my fingers tight around the edges, my face calm. I smiled. Because women like me learn early that reacting only makes things worse. I set the dish down carefully, excused myself politely, and walked down the hallway while their laughter followed me like a sound I couldn't escape. No one stopped it. No one corrected her. No one said, "That's my mother." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the door I had painted myself years ago. I remembered standing there with a roller, laughing, imagining a future that felt safe. I remembered the day I signed the mortgage papers. My name. My credit. My down payment. My son had just finished college. He had nothing yet. No savings. No stability. No plan. I told him not to worry. "This is your home," I said. "Get on your feet first." I meant it. I always meant it. I never asked for rent. Never asked for help with bills. Never asked for appreciation. Somehow, in their version of the story, I had become the help. The next morning, I did what I always did. I woke up early, made breakfast, fed the cat my daughter-in-law claimed to love. She came downstairs wearing workout clothes, her phone already in her hand. She didn't say good morning. She barely looked at me. I stood there holding something small but heavy. Keys. All of them. Front door. Back door. Garage. Mailbox. I waited until she finally noticed. "What's that?" she asked. I placed them in her palm. "Good luck managing everything now," I said quietly. Her expression changed. Confusion first. Then irritation. "What are you talking about?" I didn't argue. Didn't explain. I walked past her. Past the photos I framed. The furniture I chose. The walls I painted. I didn't take anything. Just my purse. And the coat I wore the day I brought my son home from the hospital. I heard him calling my name as I reached the door. I didn't stop. Because something inside me had broken. Not loudly, not dramatically. It broke quietly. With clarity. And clarity doesn't beg. The apartment I moved into was small and old. It smelled like dust and time. The heater made a noise like it was tired of working. I dropped my bag on the floor and stood there, unsure what I was supposed to feel. Freedom didn't come. Not yet. What came first was silence. The kind that echoes. No one called. Not that day. Not the next. I slept on the couch because the bed frame in the bedroom was broken. I ate simple food. I moved slowly, like someone recovering from something invisible. I didn't reach out, because I wanted to see who would notice I was gone. No one did. That hurt more than the insult ever could. Underscore 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 underscore. At night I started writing. Old notebooks. The kind I used to buy for my son when he was in school. I wrote things I had never said out loud. How I used to wait in the kitchen hoping he'd thank me. How I'd cry quietly when they went out without inviting me. How I pretended to sleep, so I wouldn't hear them laughing at the shows I liked. I thought I was losing myself, but really I was finding the truth. And then one night, looking for a spare light bulb in the storage closet, I found something that would change everything. An old metal box. Heavy. Rusted. Inside were envelopes. And one letter with my name on it. The handwriting belonged to my aunt, and what it revealed would explain my entire life. The next morning I didn't cry. I felt something stronger than sadness. Clarity. I showered, dressed carefully, tied my hair the way I used to when I wanted to feel confident. I held the address in my hand. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't owe anyone that anymore. The house was small. Blue paint peeling near the porch. A single car in the driveway. Wind chimes moved gently with the breeze. I stood there longer than necessary. I was afraid of disappointment. Afraid he wouldn't open the door. Afraid he wouldn't recognize me. Or worse, that he would. I knocked once. Then twice. The door opened slowly. He was older than I expected. Gray hair. Deep lines around his eyes. He looked at me for a long moment. Then his face changed. His hand went to the doorframe. "Linda?" he asked quietly. My knees almost gave out. He didn't hug me right away. He didn't cry. He stepped back and said something that broke me more than anything else ever had. "I was hoping you'd come." Inside, the house smelled like coffee and old books. There were photos on the wall. Kids, grandkids. And one picture, faded and framed, of a woman holding a baby. Me. He had kept it. All these years. He told me everything. How he was pushed away. How letters were returned unopened. How he was told to leave the past alone. He respected boundaries he never should have respected. And I paid the price for that silence. We talked for hours. About my life. My son. The house. The way I disappeared without realizing it. He listened like every word mattered. Because to him it did. Before I left, he handed me a folder. Documents. Legal papers. Property records. "My sister insisted I keep copies," he said. "In case you ever showed up." My name was on more than I realized. Assets I didn't know existed. Accounts untouched. A safety net that had been waiting quietly. Not wealth. Security, dignity, choice. Driving back, something inside me shifted. I wasn't broken. I was withheld from. And that changes how yourself. 2 days later, my son finally called. His voice sounded strained. "Mom, where are you?" I took a breath. "I moved out." A pause. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "We could have talked." I almost laughed. But I didn't. "I spent years talking without being heard," I replied calmly. Another pause. Different this time. "What do you want?" he asked. I looked around my small apartment. At the notebook on the table. At the sunlight coming through the window. "I want peace," I said. "And respect." He didn't answer. That night I made a decision. Not out of anger. Out of self-respect. I opened my laptop and began organizing documents. Names. Dates. Facts. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning boundaries. And boundaries change everything. Across town. In the house I once called home. Panic was starting to settle in. Bills weren't paid. Appointments were missed. The quiet system I had kept running silently had stopped. And for the first time, they noticed. His voice shook. "Are you going to sell the house?" I thought about it. About the walls. The door I painted. The years I shrank myself inside those rooms. "No," I said. Not yet. Relief washed over his face. But I am changing how it's used. The conversation wasn't loud. There was no shouting, just truth. The kind that doesn't need volume. I'm not your backup plan, I said. I'm not invisible help. And I won't stay where I'm not respected. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, he said. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. Weeks later, boundaries became reality. Schedules changed. Responsibilities shifted. My daughter-in-law stopped calling. I heard she was overwhelmed. I felt neutral. Not satisfied. Not guilty. Just done. One afternoon, I returned to the house. Not to stay. To retrieve a box I had left behind. Photos. Letters. Memories. My daughter-in-law was there. She looked surprised. Then uncomfortable. You didn't say you were coming, she said. I don't live here. I replied calmly. I don't need to announce myself. She crossed her arms. You're tearing this family apart. I looked at her. Softly. No, I said. I stopped holding it together alone. Her mouth opened. Closed. She looked away. I left with my box. And something else. My dignity. That night, my father called. He didn't ask questions. He just listened. You sound lighter, he said. I am, I replied. I began volunteering at a community center near my apartment. Not because I needed to be useful. Because I wanted to be present. People thanked me. Looked me in the eyes. Used my name. It felt unfamiliar. And right. Then unexpectedly, another letter arrived. Different handwriting. My son's. This one didn't ask for anything. It acknowledged everything. The years. The imbalance. The silence. He ended it with, I see you now. I folded the letter carefully. Some things are worth keeping. But the story wasn't over. Because healing doesn't end with boundaries. It begins with choice. And I was finally ready to choose myself. The first morning I woke up without dread felt unfamiliar. No list running through my head. No pressure to be useful. No quiet fear of disappointing someone. Just light. It came through the window slowly, like it wasn't in a hurry. I sat on the edge of my bed and let myself breathe. Really breathe. I stopped explaining myself. To neighbors. To family. To people who only understood me when I was convenient. When someone asked why I moved, I said, because it was time. That was enough. I began cooking again. Not to impress. Not to serve. Just because I enjoyed it. Some days I burned things. Some days I didn't feel like trying. Both were allowed. My son started visiting differently. Not with expectation. With curiosity. He asked questions. Listened without interrupting. One afternoon he looked at me and said, I didn't know how much you carried. I smiled softly. You weren't supposed to, I replied. I should have put it down sooner. I visited my father often. We didn't try to make up for lost time. We used the time we had. Coffee in silence. Short walks. Shared stories. No regret. Just presence. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror and noticed something. I looked taller. Not physically. Internally. Like I had stopped folding myself in half. The house was eventually sold. Not out of anger. Out of closure. I kept one thing. The front door. The one I painted. It now leaned against the wall of my apartment like a quiet reminder. Not of loss. Of growth. The money wasn't what changed me. Choice was. The ability to say yes. And no. Without guilt. People often think strength looks loud. It doesn't. Sometimes it looks like leaving quietly. Sometimes it looks like not returning. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace over familiarity. On my birthday, I received a message from my daughter-in-law. It was short. I understand now. I didn't reply. Understanding doesn't always require a response. That night, I wrote one last thing in my notebook. Not for anyone else. For me. I am not invisible. I never was. I was just surrounded by people who didn't know how to see. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, if you've been the strong one, the quiet one, the one who holds everything together, let me tell you something I learned too late, but not too late. You don't owe your life to people who only love you when you're useful. You owe it to yourself.